Welcome to Ella's Beefeaster's Radio Air Check and Classic TV channel.
Thank you.
WPLJ FM and HD1, New York, a Mojo station.
It's 95.5 PLJ Reunion Day. Bringing back all your favorite DJs from the past 48 years.
WPLJ, New York, New York.
It's 95.5 PLJ Reunion Day.
Please welcome back Fast Jimmy Roberts and AJ Hammer.
Wow. Hey. Hey. It's been a long time since I've been in this room, in this chair.
No kidding.
This is just awesome. Listen, before we start yakking here about the past and memories, can we just give it up for Scott Shannon?
Yes. Yeah. Wow.
I'm gonna tell you a quick story about Scott, and I told him this story a long time ago, but he does not believe me. When I was a baby DJ, I was 18 years old. I was working a little radio station in Monroe, Louisiana, my first job, and I was thought, is this really what I want to do with my life? Do I want to be a disc jockey? And then I heard an air check of Scott Shannon at some station in Atlanta, and all that man said was, I like this song a whole bunch. I'm Scott Shannon. And I went, that's what I want to do.
That's it, right there.
That's all it took. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. Sure. And he's the reason I have no discernible skills other than sitting behind a microphone. So thanks for that, Scott Shannon.
Fast Jimmy Roberts.
AJ Hammer.
Fast Jimmy Roberts. So here we are. It is such a flashback, and walking through these hallways, everybody's been talking about the fact today, you know, the people, the faces you run into. I mean, seeing Joey Kramer face to face. When I walked out of this studio 25 years ago, you were standing right here.
I was.
You look exactly the same.
Oh, you're too kind.
I actually almost didn't make it in on time to do this whole thing today because I'm driving in and I hear Heather O'Rourke do a traffic report and I adjusted my plan. Then I realized it was a traffic report from 15 years ago.
That's right. That damn LIE.
When Lionel Richie was here. We actually have a lot of great memories to share, Fast and I. He's one of the people that I have remained dear friends with for the 30-some-odd years since I started at this radio station.
Isn't that crazy? Back
in 1990. And we would like to share those. We want to hear from some of the listeners and hear what they want to ask us about some of the great memories of the various things we've done over the years. But Fast, because you were here, man. You were here working your butt off under several iterations, including the Power 95 era.
WWPR, all of that.
But getting here was a big, big deal. I grew up in the New York area, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you talk about hearing Shannon somewhere else and being inspired to be in radio, but you were really inspired to be at this radio station, or at least in this town at some point in your career.
Absolutely. Mostly when I drove through the Lincoln Tunnel. We'll get into the story later, but I drove through the Lincoln Tunnel with my family, my mother and my father, who were from Brooklyn, by the way. They grew up they were in Louisiana with me. But we came through the Lincoln Tunnel, and the adrenaline buzz that I got, I went, I want more of this. And I told my dad, I said, I'm going to get a job here one day. And he's like, you're crazy. Wow. And I go, no, I'm going to work here. And it was a proud day of my life, calling my father from 1336th Avenue, going, guess where I am gigging.
And it's unbelievable to think we are here now, some 30-plus years later, looking back at it all. Do you remember the first song you ever played on 95.5 FM?
I do indeed. This very nervous disc jockey cracked a mic with Dave Charity. God rest his soul. Yeah. Dave Charity was my trainer for the night. It was Romantics, Talking in Your Sleep. It was awesome. Yeah. It's great.
Fast Jimmy with non-stop music on Power 95.
Can you indulge me for a second here while we're talking up this song?
Don't screw it up.
I've been wanting to do this since February 5th of 1999. My name is Fast Jimmy, and this is 95.5 WPLJ, New York.
Woo! Everybody started clapping, but I do want to point out you did hit the first post.
I did post it. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Shannon smiling.
From Broadway to the LIE, from the Jersey Shore to the GWB, wherever you go, the best songs on the radio. 95.5 WPLJ. We go together, better than birds of a feather, you and me.
Yeah, it's 95.5 PLJ. Listen to me coming out of a song. And by the way, let me point out the first time ever coming out of a Jonas Brothers song, because they never existed when I was on the radio.
That's right.
So we have a lot of ground to cover. It's AJ Hammer along with Fast Jimmy Roberts. Fast Jimmy Roberts. I don't think his microphone is
Hang
on.
on a second.
Shannon decided
Come
he
on.
didn't like
Yeah,
what
what,
you
is
did.
Scott coming here and turn it off?
You don't got to put that guy
You know
on.
what? Fast Jimmy, you're so good. You don't need a microphone.
So I want you to tell this great story about getting hired here at PLJ, because for any radio disc jockey, personality, baby DJ, getting hired at this radio station, or quite frankly anywhere in New York City, can be the highlight of a career.
Indeed.
It is market number one in the world. Before we get to all that, I'm jumping around a little bit.
It's all good.
One of the things that took up a lot of our time here on the air was giving away stuff, from money to cars to T-shirts to movie passes.
Everything.
And you gave away tons of stuff on your show, and you even had some celebrity people winning stuff who weren't, like, who comes to mind as a contest winner?
Debbie Gibson.
She used to actually, she was caller 95?
Many, many times. I've given Debbie Gibson thousands of dollars worth of things. I'll tell you real quickly, I'll tell you the story. One of my best friends in Indiana was named Debbie Gibson. So this 13-year-old girl calls the request line one night when we were over at the 1330, and we're chatting, and I said, "What's your name?" She goes, "Debbie Gibson." I go, "Oh, my friend in Indiana is Debbie Gibson." So we started chatting, and she goes, "Well, I'm a singer, and I do songs and stuff." And I said, "We should send a tape sometime, And she did.
Yeah.
And from that point, she became the winner of the Wham track trip to see Wham in Philadelphia. She won thousands of dollars, and if she were here today, I wish we could get her on the phone. We did a contest called the Album Wrapper, where you had to name as many albums as you could in 60 seconds, and you would win them all.
Could you do that, Deb?
Debbie, you out there?
Arena.
You're kidding me.
I mean,
Off the wall, cancel dance, private dancer. I still remember it,
You
Jimmy.
do have it? In your head, you still...
It's Debbie. I drilled that so many times that I was sitting with Jonathan Knight last night in catering on our tour, and I rattled them off for him. Arena like Virgin, Big Bad Room, Mexican Machine, Crazy Machine, Chinese Wall, Purple Rain, She's So Unusual, Cancel Down, Flash Dance, Thriller, Footloose, Thriller, I can't remember the rest. But anyway, you get the gist.
Do we have 52 albums we can give her right now?
So the crazy thing is,
let me tell you, I used to go to Tower Records. It was the most amazing thing. I had the radio letter, and you'd hand them the letter, and you'd get to go around the store and pick out all the albums you want, and you'd leave with this giant stack of albums. And I won that contest 3 times.
Yes,
I won
you
about
did.
100 albums.
oh, you were such a geek.
Mostly from me.
Total radio geek.
But,
yes,
but
totally
everybody
from
needs
you.
to keep in mind, before she was a big superstar, she was growing up on Long Island, listening to PLJ. And I imagine, and tell me, Deb, it has to have been part of your dream to one day I'm going to have a hit song and it's going to be played on that radio station.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, to hear you, Fast Jimmy Roberts, like, go from giving me prizes to announcing my record on air from, like you said, between the ages of, like, 13 and 16 was so surreal. And, yes, such a dream come true, because I was a theater baby, and I was wanting to be on Broadway. That was my first goal. But when I became a songwriter, really, like, full-time, 12 years old, I couldn't stop writing songs. And I became so fixated with being on the radio. And, of course, being on my favorite stations, and PLJ was my favorite. That was what I listened to. So it was incredible.
When I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could get Debbie on the phone, I know that sounded like a setup, but I had no idea you were actually on the phone. AJ did that.
Of course, I reached...
AJ arranged that.
I reached out to Deb the other day, and she said, of course, PLJ is a rich part of her history, like so many New Yorkers who just listen to the radio, separate from, of course, the amazing career she's had. And the crazy thing for Deb and I, to the extent anybody cares, but I would play her songs. And in fact, you know this, Deb, because I used to do it for you. We'd be driving in the car, and Only My Dreams would come on, and I would talk it up because it was one of my favorite songs to talk up.
Sure.
Just with the drums and the riffs and all of that. But she and I never actually met. You did a couple of phone interviews with me when I was here, but I don't think we really met, and then subsequently became best friends when I was on VH1 years later.
In fact, the last time I saw you, Debbie, I was in Los Angeles after getting vaporized here with the rest of the staff 20 years ago. I was in L.A. sitting at breakfast with AJ, and you came walking by.
Oh, my God, the coincidences are endless.
And what's amazing now is, Deb's, you're in Sacramento right now, I imagine, or on your way there?
Yeah, so literally our tour bus just pulled up about, I don't know, an hour or two ago. Who knows? I was sleeping.
So this is the
yeah.
mixtape tour with the New Kids on the Block. And how's Tiffany doing? She's on the tour, too, which is crazy because, of course, she was a part of that era back then. Salt and Pepper, Naughty by Nature.
Salt and Pepper, Naughty by Nature. Tiffany's rocking it every night. If people have not heard this girl sing in years, she's just stronger than ever. She's incredible. And I love the idea that we're all, look, we all started in that era and we are all still here and vital and doing it. It's a retro show in terms of the fact that we're doing our old hits, but everybody's like living in a modern world. Everybody's super relevant and cool, and the audiences are so cool, and we're packing arenas of like 15,000 people every night. It is
awesome.
Thrilling. Yeah, it's thrilling.
I'm so happy for you because you were the sweetest person when you were 13. You're still the sweetest person, but when I first met you, you were the sweetest kid ever. You used to come to the radio studio with your mom. Do you remember coming up and hanging out?
Of course.
Bringing me tapes and hanging out.
I know.
Very quickly, one night.
I've gotten like very sentimental about my mom lately. I just, to give her a little shout out. It's like, I don't think I'd be on this tour bus right now if it weren't for her. I mean, she was a force to be reckoned with, and
Indeed.
She got a bad rap because she was a momager. But listen, I survived, and I'm sane, and I'm healthy, and I don't have any horrific stories to tell because my mom was that protective, and she did such an incredible job, and she broke ground as a female executive. I mean, it's an incredible story.
You did not mess with Diane.
No.
So, quick plug.
But then she's like a softie under it all.
Nassau Coliseum, you guys are going to be in this area, so people should check out your show. That's going to be on June 30th. And by the way, just on Tiffany for a moment, Tiffany, of course, was the inspiration for the A.J. Hammer Mall Tour, which kicked off promotion of me when I first started at the radio station.
I got to tell her that today when I see her, that we spoke and you brought that up. That's
she'll probably cringe a little bit. Anyway, I would like to play a song right now, which is not a likely song. It does have an incredibly long intro. Does it still have the long intro, Race?
Oh, yeah. But you've got 27 seconds.
That's all day.
But you had just released this album, and this was your big hit at the time I got to PLJ. Would you please do the honors? Are you able to hear what we're playing here?
I can't hear it yet.
Okay, well, it's Anything is Possible. And it's Debbie Gibson.
Oh, that's amazing.
Good luck with the tour.
PLJ. Thank you. Bye, guys.
I love you, Debbie Gibson.
I may as well hit the post, right? Here it comes on PLJ.
Bringing back your favorite DJs that made PLJ great. This is 95.5 PLJ Reunion Day.
It's so cool to be here. Your mic's not on again. Fast Jimmy has this problem.
Not my problem.
They blew him out of here 20 years ago, and they said, well, if you come back, you can sit in the studio. We're just not going to crack your mic.
With a dead mic. With a dead mic.
Yeah. So it was great hearing from Deb, and of course, that's Debbie Gibson. That was from 1990, which was the year that I was hired, and that song was a huge hit right at that time. But prior to that, and a few iterations of PLJ before that, Fast Jimmy, you first got hired here in New York, and you did like every shift on the radio station, from what I recall.
I started off Saturday and Sunday nights, every other Sunday, actually. Made a living doing every Saturday and every other Sunday. Then went to
I think you probably got paid more then than you would now for the same gig.
Then went to nights, and then afternoons, and then middays, and then back down. It was just all over the place.
But getting hired here, we were alluding to that a little earlier.
Yeah.
What a huge moment for anybody in this business to wind up in New York, and what are the chances? Really?
Let me make a long story as short as I can. And hello, Dave Stewart.
Hi.
Long story very short. I remember the day that I first came to New York City for the first time. It was with my mom and dad, and it was the night of the Diana Ross concert in Central Park when the term wilding was invented that night. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
There was kind of riots all over the city. So we're eating at Long John's Limited in the Highlands. Hello, Highlands. And my mom looks across and she goes, wow, New York's so close. Can we go to New York? And I'm like, well, yeah. So I'd never been. My wife had never been. My parents hadn't been in 30 years. So we come through the Lincoln Tunnel. We get on 42nd Street. And we're basically in a riot. And my mom is freaking out. My dad is freaking out. And I'm feeling it. It just felt right. Just the energy was fantastic, and I did an illegal U-turn to get my parents out of there, and I turned to my father at that point, and I said, I have to get a job here. And he said, you're out of your mind. And I said, no, this is where I belong. Did you see how well I handled the traffic? I was driving like a cab driver. It was just awesome. And I went home that night, and I started working on an air check, and I started sending them in. I was going to send them to Scott at Z100, but Larry Berger happened to open the envelope first. If Scott ever actually opened mine, I don't know. But Berger called me, and I had a job within a couple of days, and was here for 16 years.
That's awesome.
It's crazy.
That's awesome.
It was just nuts.
I grew up, of course, listening to the radio station. being a White Plains boy, and New York was, of course, anybody who lived in Westchester, New York City was our backyard. And I had that iconic WPLJ poster, the one that had the neon around it, WPLJ 95.5, and it was from the New York's Greatest Rock
From the
era.
Rock days, right.
Because, of course, I grew up listening to Tony Pigg and Jim Kerr and Jimmy Fink and all those guys from back then. Pat St. John, and what's incredible is then you go on in your career to become friends with these guys ultimately.
Very much so.
But flash forward a bit, and I was in my early 20s, just out of college, working in Hartford, Connecticut at 96 TIC-FM. It was my first full-time job in my life, and that was a great gig. And barely a year into that, I think it was, I get a call from Mike Preston, who was the music director here at the radio station, maybe assistant program director at the time.
Radio aficionados will know him as Batman Gomez.
Yes.
So Mike calls, and he says, so I'm from PLJ, and we'd love for you to come down and talk with us about, maybe doing some work here. And he wasn't specific about what the shift was at all. I'm 22 years old. And, of course, I'm freaking out, right? So I naturally say, yeah, I'll be down there. They said, first we need you to go piss in a cup. They drug tested you before the meeting.
I was grandfathered in. I didn't have to do that.
Before the interview, yeah. So I went through that process right by the old New York Coliseum, which is now where the Time Warner Center is. And then I come in here, and I'm sitting with Tom Cuddy, everybody's buddy, and I'm sitting with Mike Preston. And we have a nice enough conversation, and this is when Domino was on the radio. You guys remember Domino? You guys were playing clips. Sure. So I would drive to my show in Hartford, listening to tapes of Domino for inspiration, because he was just this awesome jock with a lot of great energy. And so I would do that, and then I came here, and I had no idea what was going on. We had a great chat. Mike Preston gives me the tour in the hallway later, and we're back in that little production studio. And I said, so Mike, can you level with me? What is this? Is this like for weekend overnights? I had no idea what kind of shift he was talking about. I says, you're a smart guy. You'll figure it out. And I had no idea what he was talking about. I had no idea. And then 5 days later, Tom Cuddy calls me up, and he, in fact, offers me the night show, which I believe then was 7 to 11. At that time, so Rocky was doing the morning show. I think you were doing middays.
I was doing middays at that time.
You and Kim Ashley split the midday shift,
exactly.
Right? And then Skywalker in the afternoon. I came on. And so then was it Terry Fox and then Dave Stewart?
Yeah, for a while they had me doing like 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. because I was working at KC 101 in New Haven, just down the street from you at TIC-FM, doing both. So then they had me do the 11 to 1, and then eventually they extended you 7 to midnight, and they made me midnight to 5 or 6.
Yeah. And then my shift went all over the place. It was 7 to 11, then it was 8 to midnight, and when Shannon came in, and then it became 7 to midnight. And that was when it was time to go. But but in any event, a lot of people ask us about the Mojo days. And I was here for 5.5 months before the Mojo days, and this was a great radio station.
Oh.
It really, I was sort of the last piece of the air staff puzzle to come in at that time. And I just felt the station, and you guys have been talking about this, Race and Joey, just the people in the hallway and this, what we call stationality. There was a vibe about it. Everything was consistent. Everybody sort of shared the same idea. And Tom Cuddy put this staff, he cast this staff, as he always used to like to say. And everybody was geared towards the same thing. And I thought it was a great sounding radio station.
Oh, we had a great time.
No doubt.
And Mojo was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment.
Okay, all right.
Now, one of my first songs that I ever played, I'm not going to play the very first song. I was going to do that. It was Dirty Cash by Adventures of Stevie V.
Oh, man.
And actually, I should say, Dave Stewart, do you remember training me before? I did an overnight shift before I actually started, which was pretty typical.
Yes.
I came in on the weekend, and I did it under the name of Little Stevie Kushner,
Kingston.
And we don't have to say who that actually is. If you know, you know.
Oh, I just did.
But Tom Cuddy said, go on as Little Stevie Kushner. I said, okay. But I did play this next song an awful lot because the guy who sings this song or raps this song was an enormous star. Now, do we have a nice jock jingle queued up that we can play into this song? Go ahead, Race. Hit that button.
One of those big sexy blondes who plays a lot of volleyball.
Now, this is not the custom version of the song, but this is, in fact, Vanilla Ice on PLJ.
Yo, VIP. Let's kick it.
.95.5 WPLJ, New York City. It's Fast Jimmy and AJ Hammer, Dave Stewart hanging out with us. We're back in Gotham on the radio.
Pretty crazy, right?
Back in New York City.
Oh, my God.
So you were just asking me about my first couple of days here, how I got hired. You had a really big first week.
Well, they were pretty great to me in welcoming me to New York, and everybody else on the station had been established, and I'm the new guy coming in. Domino had been really established here, so Tom Cuddy and Mike Preston set up all of these special guests to either drop by the studio during that first week or to phone in. We had John Bon Jovi, who, by the way, John wanted to call in today or join us somehow, but he's busy traveling, so he wasn't able to make it. Vanilla Ice, who we just played, had stopped by the studio, did a very custom WPLJ AJ Hammer Skywalker rap.
He sat in this chair.
I believe he did.
Well, not this chair.
How's that
This
feeling?
spot.
And it was sort of cool and something very unorthodox back in 1990 to hear from the competition. And I believe the competition is actually still on the line. And what was cool is this is a guy who not only I grew up revering in radio, but he called me on my first week to basically say, hey, man, welcome to New York. We come from the same fraternity because I was at the station in Hartford that I used to listen to him. People don't like hearing when I was growing up. But now, of course, he rules the airwaves in Afternoon Drive. He was on Hot 97 when I first got to town.
And brilliantly so.
One of the best jocks on the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, Broadway Bill from CBS FM.
You guys. Oh, man. AJ, it's good to hear you on the radio again. Of course, you always had the face for television, so I knew you wouldn't be around too long.
You sound all basted and buttered up.
And Fast Jimmy, good God.
My brother.
We actually got to work together. Jimmy did some help with us on CBS FM when we put it back on the air after some fools took it off. But you guys, I got to tell you, AJ, I'm really proud of where you've come and gone from in your career. My goodness, man, you just showed us all up with how far you could go in this business. And, I think like everybody else, I've just got some great PLJ memories myself. When Hot 97 cranked up on the air, it was actually Hot 103, and we were really aggressive. I mean, we were doing nasty stuff like, the number you have reached, WPLJ, is disconnected. But the thing is like when I had to do a gig at the Garden and watch Jim Kerr, and so he couldn't have been nicer. We sat down together. We actually drank through the whole show. And he couldn't have been nicer, and it changed like everything. All of a sudden, we all became good friends. It was a fraternity. And AJ, when you got to town, I wanted to make sure you were part of that fraternity because it just got to be just great. I mean, I got to be good friends with Sky when he turned into Blair Gardner. I went out to visit him on his all-night show out in L.A. My wife Beth and I had a great time out there. And I got to tell you something else, quick little story. My wife Beth was doing Metro Traffic with Joe Nolan.
Right.
And she wanted to work on PLJ in the worst way. And, she'd come home. I go, honey, what happened today? She says, well, I got in this laundry chute, and I was able to get in this laundry basket, or maybe it was a mail basket, I don't know. But they started wheeling it up, and when they got to PLJ, I jumped out to see if I could, get into Larry Berger's office.
I've never heard that story. Your wife, the Trojan horse.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And they said, well, no, we're not hiring today. Thank you very much. So a week later was St. Patrick's Day, and we just came from the parade, maybe had a couple of beers at 10 a.m. in the morning. And so we said, what the heck, let's go up and see Larry. Maybe he'll answer the door for me. So we got there, and Larry said, Broadway Bill Lee is there. Oh, show him up, show him up. So Beth and I went up to Larry's office, and we had the best conversation for about an hour. Beth didn't get a job, but we had a great time that day.
And amazing. A great story.
That's amazing. Well, yeah. Bill, I have to tell you something. We've known each other now as real people for a number of years, and we have a lot of folks in the business in common, and it literally goes back to, I'm just going to say, 1982 or 1 when I would listen to you from summer camp in Hartford when you were on 96 TICFM.
Yeah.
But still, to this day, the little radio geek in me, which I guess will never be gone, and I'm feeling that today, will just always be in awe of you, my friend. And just take it and listen to me say that and be okay with it, because that's how I feel, and that's how everybody in this business feels.
Thank you, AJ. To be honest with you, I was listening earlier when Fast Jimmy was saying he has no other discernible skills. Actually, I relate to that so well. It's on my driver's license. Don't let this guy do anything else other than talk up records.
All of this massive talent can be heard every afternoon on CBS FM 101.1. Oh, I said that on PLJ. That's a weird thing for
You
me.
get a pass today on that. You get a pass today.
Between Scott Shannon, Dave Stewart, and now Bill Lee, this is CBS FM.
Broadway, thank you so much. It means the world to us that you called in today and shared those memories. I really appreciate that.
Hey, blessings on both you guys. We love you, and we're going to really miss PLJ a whole lot.
Well, we actually missed PLJ a whole lot for at least 5.5 months when we stepped into this era.
Spanning the galaxy.
Yeah.
With 1 million Bubba Watts. Bubba Watts. This is Mojo Radio. 95.5 FM.
So I still feel like we have so much ground to cover. Wow. Can I blast through the Mojo really quick?
Let's go.
Because this was such an era. It was April 1st, 1991. I'm at home because I do the night show, so I was at my place on the Upper West Side, and I get a phone call from Tom Cuddy, who was the head of operations at the time, and he said something unfathomable that we were most certain was an April Fool's joke. He said, so, we just hired Scott Shannon. He's going to be doing the mornings. We're going to be making these changes, and he's going to be, basically program director and running WPLJ. And we, of course, thought it was BS and certainly an April Fool's joke. Because, remember, WPLJ was the radio station that Scott Shannon spent years trashing as the WIMP, WIMP, all of these things when he put on one of the nation's great radio stations, Z100, back in the early 80s. And he came in and he tore this station down. So the idea that he was coming here to be the PD and morning man just didn't seem possible. Sure. Now, on the one hand, as I talked about earlier, we thought PLJ really had great momentum at the time, so it was a little frightening that we would be somehow altering the course of that because we really liked what was going on. On the other hand, Scott was the guy that so many of us, you just were saying fast, he was the guy we wanted to work for one day, and he was falling into our lap. So, we thought, if he doesn't blow the station up, which we were told he's not going to do right away in terms of getting rid of people,
not yet,
then in that case, this could turn into a great thing. And I'll never forget that first day that he was in here. And Dave, tell me, I don't know if you were in the building at the time, he's walking around in the hallway, he's got his dark sunglasses on. He's got a transistor radio in his hand with his thumb on the volume knob, and he keeps turning it up and down and up and down. And it was on PLJ, of course. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And there was this really scary guy next to him, also in dark sunglasses, who was Mark Driscoll, who was the voice you just heard. But he was scary looking to me at the time, and I was very intimidated by all that was going on. Yeah. And if you remember, the DJs went away for a couple of weeks.
We were all on vacation.
At Grossinger's up in the Catskills. They even brought along 8J Hammer, is how that promo went. Yeah. So it was quite a time, but as I've always said, as ridiculous as I think we all sounded at times, and you're about to hear a little clip of that era, it was the most fun I have ever had on the radio.
Without a doubt, the most fun.
And we turned my show into the all-request Mojo show. We had the Hammer Hot 5 at 9. I don't know where Homeboy Harry is. He's hiding out somewhere. I'd really like him to be in here for this. But one of the things we did, and hopefully we still have this caller on the line, we're going to play the sound first, was a particular contest that we ran every hour, every night of my show. And, well, do we have the sound race?
Are we looking for the high five?
The wheel. We're looking for the wheel.
Wheel? You got to find me the wheel.
I thought we had
the wheel. No, we don't have the wheel quite yet.
Oh, I thought the wheel was in there.
But
Come
it's
on,
coming.
man.
All right.
I know.
Well,
this is live radio.
Just blame me. I was always the producer.
Then while you're looking for that, can we bring in Celeste if she's still here? Because she's calling in from...
Celeste is right here on line 8. Hello,
from
Celeste.
Bayville. Hello,
Celeste.
Hi, Fast.
Celeste. Hello. How are you?
So, Celeste,
I'm well.
Tell everybody the name of the radio contest that you won on my show when we were Mojo Radio.
It was the Wheel of Squeals and Deals.
It was no. It was the Wheel of Squeals and Concert Deals.
Concert Deals. Okay, I left a word out, but you'd hear this pig noise in the background.
Yeah. Well,
and the wheel spinning.
Yeah. Hang on a sec, Celeste, because I believe we can go back in time. This is not you, but
You've reached the Mojo All Night Sushi Stand. What's your name?
Roxanne Perella.
Roxanne, please tell me where you're calling from.
Seafood Long Island.
Let me tell you, you're caller 95, Roxanne.
All right, thank you.
Roxanne.
All right.
right, check it out, girlfriend. Here it is. Staying at the Garden. Bad Company with Damn Yankees, Jones Beach. Rod Stewart either at the Meadowlands or at Nassau Coliseum. If you were to have some control over where the wheel would stop, not that you do, what would you hope it would land on?
Could I pick, I would hope it would land on Rod Stewart at Nassau Coliseum.
Okay, we'll just give it a whirl and see what happens. You just never know. Kind of sounds like Scott Shannon in a bad mood, doesn't it? Oh, I didn't say that, Scott. Not me. Harry. That was Harry. Roxanne! It's Rod Stewart at Nassau Coliseum. It works out again. Congratulations from the Mojo.
Okay. All right, so a couple quick things about that. First of all, that voice you hear on there, who went on to his own bit of radio fame, was Todd Schnitt. That was MJ. The pig. That was Todd Schnitt was the pig there. Yeah. The other thing, the way we came up with that name, we used to just have the concert wheel, and that was boring for Mojo Radio. So I go into Shannon one day, and he says, "We got to do something different about that." And he says, "Let's call it." You remember this, Harry? Let's call it the wheel of squeals and concert deals, and that's how his brain worked. And he said, "Get a wheel and put the pig noise on it." And of course. Every time we'd have all these selections of what it would land on, but whatever the person said it would land on, it would land on. And
of course.
It was just so silly. Yeah. What's your big Mojo memory, Fast?
My big Mojo memory is Scott saying, "I want you to go in there and I want you to open the mic and I want you to sound nasty." And I said, "All right." So I went on and I sounded nasty, and he came in and he goes, "I didn't tell you to sound mean." And I knew exactly what he was talking about. It was brilliant.
No, there was an attitude, guys, that he just had us pour on, or as you said to me the other day when we were talking, sort of by way of osmosis. We all kind of sounded a little rougher around the edges. And then after the format started to change and we went into this weird hybrid before it was all PLJ again, all of a sudden our voices changed.
We were
back.
all trying to get back to normal.
Do you remember when he called me one night and said, "Next time you open your mic, I want you to say, 'I'm A.J. Hammer, the Boogie Pig.'" I don't know why. And then Fast one night when he was introducing me said,
"The cocky young whippersnapper, A.J. Hammer, is coming up next."
We, of course, had so many great guests coming by the studio, as we were talking about earlier, and, of course, they would record little intros for us. And this one in particular, we got the thing queued up there that I want to play, and then we'll play his song. Sure. Yeah, this was an idea of what we sounded like back in this era in 1991.
Hey, yo, what's up? This is Marky Mark, and I'm chilling in New York City, and I'm hanging out with A.J. Hammer on Mojo Radio. That's a rhyme. Can I put that on my record? I'm going to put that on my next record, Mojo Radio. I like that.